This is a
Sometimes
conversation.
I want to do what you do, where I'm just like, and let me tell you.
Yeah. Do like, you're like, oh, or you can go fuck yourself. Like that kind of shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, totally.
So now I have that ability.
I put up a thing over me. I don't like seeing myself when I'm recording because are we all narcissistic enough we want to stare at ourselves? Because I definitely do. And I'm like, but I don't really want to. So I put up a thing so I can't see myself.
Oh, no, I need to see myself because I don't want the camera shot to be fucked. Yeah. It is what they call a confidence monitor. You have to see something that is going out so you don't have it in the back of your head that everything is technically going wrong.
I don't even record myself doing my other shows because I hate it so much. So I don't look at myself or not look at myself. I don't let anyone look at me.
Yeah.
You guys had to talk me into this.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
you were
but
worried about that.
You also do your program naked. Have you mentioned this before? Like it's weird that that's your creative process.
It's because of how it handles the sound waves.
Yeah, you
They bounce off
It bounces
the
better. It
I mean,
bounces
you could
better.
if you did it
yeah.
on OnlyFans simultaneously, but it would change the nature of the program.
You know, no joke. People have told me that if I talked about the stuff I talk about, like Congress, but did it topless, I would be a multimillionaire. And I honestly believe that's true. I think
You really think that? No, you look.
I
The
do,
fastest
I think-
way to sell pictures of your butthole is to start by talking about Congress with your top off. Like, eventually, that will just lead to like, okay, but I'll pay you 7 times as much if you just take a picture of your butthole.
Well, I mean, if I'm doing this with my
While
top off, I'm
mentioning
already there.
appropriations. Yeah.
Yeah, I would be a completely different person if I was open to any of these suggestions. But
Yeah.
I do think being the Congress chick that does it without her top on would be more lucrative than being the Congress chick who just talks about Congress.
Yeah. It is a vacant market.
No one
There
does
is
it.
no topless Congress chick right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could be me.
It could be you.
It's not going
Ever
to be.
since Greta Van Susteren retired, there's just been a
Exactly.
big niche that's just not been filled with tits.
Is she a Scientologist, or is that just a thing that I'm?
That's true. I remember hearing that from people that weren't attempting to slander her back in the day.
Yeah.
I think I believe she's a Scientologist, and she despises New York City. These are the 2 things I know about Greta Van Susteren. She went and visited some of my friends in New York, and they said that like she came out, immediately sneered and went, "I hate the city," like did the lunch, got on a train and went right back to DC.
It's like the one thing I have in common with her. I just can't with New York.
Scientology.
Yeah.
I can't with Scientology either, actually. But with New York, yeah, that city, it's just too much.
I can handle New York for a good week. If only we had some kind of topic about it, would be terrific.
Yeah.
Because I could wane, I could wax and wane on it. I lived there for 5 years. I love New York City. It's a lot. So I can go there for a week or 2, and then after that, I would need about $200,000 more per year than I'm currently making to make that work. New York's terrific, but the problem is there's no middle. You're either living in bunk beds in a converted dumbwaiter, or
Yeah.
you're a venture capitalist with $1 billion. There's nothing in between. Like you can't level up there as your income goes. All you do is just move to a different dumbwaiter.
But even if I was a baller and had all the money, I would never want to live in New York because it's just like such a concrete jungle. It makes me sad. And I know like Central Park, sure, whatever.
Concrete jungle where dreams are made of. There's nothing
Okay.
you can't do.
Yeah, that's
Now
the
you're in
rumor.
New York.
Jen, if my life had gone a little bit differently, when I interviewed it last week tonight, if that had worked and I'd suddenly had a spike in income, I doubt they make crazy money, but if I'd had a spike in income from what I was making, my goal would have been
The lucrative career of comedy writer.
comedy writing.
I know, right?
But compared to what I was doing,
Yeah.
comedy writing not very well,
Yeah.
with no regular money, that I would have like double, triple my income. My goal would have eventually been to have like a cabin in I don't know, upstate New York, and I probably would have lived in Peekskill, which I think is adorable and is train accessible. And then you go into the city, but you live out in green area or something like that.
That I could handle.
But then you're commuting like an hour
Yeah,
and a half
I'd
by
probably-
train every day.
I'd probably I loved living in Alphabet City. That was fun.
So 3 hours on a train every day.
I take back what I said. I would want to have the cabin upstate and go there on weekends and live in the city during the week.
That seems like just a lot.
That's
Just
New
live a
York.
place you
It's
like.
a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot.
No,
What I'm
I
hearing
agree.
is You would be living in New York and trying to escape New York all the time.
New
That's what I'm
York
hearing.
is best lived like a character from Succession. Like if you can mostly just avoid traffic by helicopter, then it's a really great city.
Yeah.
5 stars if that's the case. Otherwise, it just kind of
dirty.
I think that would help tremendously because I left in no small part because the transit was killing me. Like the New York City subway system it covers a massive amount of people. And the last year I was there, for folks that have never lived in a place with a subway system, metro, underground, whatever, you're used to having highways. Imagine every day when you drive to work and you get in your car and you get on the highway, every day there's an announcement where they go, today I-35 is not going north. It goes east instead. And you now have to figure out.
Wait, hold on. Let's be more accurate here, Andrew. Every day you hear
There was this when I lived in Astoria, there was this one specific driver in Astoria that I thought was so funny because every announcement he made, all of them were like this, okay? The next stop is 33rd Street, okay? Like every single time he talked. The next stop is Ditmars, all right?
Like he was fighting, like
he wasn't planning
to start a fight.
He wasn't going to tell anybody.
A domestic disturbance.
Yeah, like he wasn't going to tell anybody anyway, and it wasn't a part of his job. But somebody kept knocking on the door, and going, "Can you tell us what the next stop is?" And he was reluctantly doing it to a bunch of idiots. It was very funny. But
Flushing. What's your problem?
But the subway system, it would change so frequently, and it was just sort of erratically. Maybe there's going to be a 35-minute difference, so you can never plan ahead unless you want to book in 35 minutes. If I'd had a helicopter, game changer. I just would have lived on the roof of Marie's Crisis and helicopter.
I don't understand this. What do you mean it changes? Like in Boston and DC and every other place on the planet, the subway line is the subway line. How does it change routes?
Oh no! It just stops going to certain stations every once in a while. We're actually eating into our first topic, so let's table it for now because this kind of feeds into what we're going to talk about. Do we want to touch on anything in the news, or do we want to try and stay away from it?
I mean, it's fine. I should probably warn people that I'm fragile today.
Yeah,
just
is it Justin Trudeau?
No, Jesus. No. Southern California is on fire, and
you have so many friends and family. You grew up in Southern California. This is a personal tragedy that is happening.
It's sad.
Yes,
it's very sad. Yeah. There's places that I know very well. There's a PCH is a road that I've driven. I was telling Justin, I don't know, countless times. Like I can't even guess how many times I've driven it because it's the road I take between my dad's and my sister's house, and it's gone. It's gone. And it's looking like for the Pacific Palisades that this is probably going to be a Lahaina situation, where when I'm talking right now, it's the morning after it started. It started approximately 22 hours ago, but it's completely out of control. They can't even guess how many structures are gone, but just like watching the footage, because you can actually watch during the fires, KTLA, KCAL9, NBC4, like they go live. So I've been watching them.
It is like no commercials, just constant information and visuals. Yeah.
It's been an entire day, and I couldn't sleep in the middle of the night, so I woke up and just like watched these places that I know burn. And I know that I shouldn't do this. Like I should turn it off because there's nothing I can do when I watch this footage. It was just kind of like, if it's going to happen, I'm bearing witness, and I will be very surprised if there's much left tomorrow. And then there's the Eaton fire, which is over near Pasadena, and that started in the city. And the thing is, like, whenever these fires happen, I always get really upset because there's a bunch of people who are like, oh, there's rich Californians, fuck them, they're fine.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of rich people who have there's a line of houses when you're driving up PCH that you're like looking at the ocean, and then you can't see the ocean for a while because there's this line of mansions. And like that line, I think it's gone entirely. So it's like, there are those people, but now there's apartment buildings.
Well, but also like this is the frustrating part, and I know that our friend Brian Brushwood got very frustrated with this during the Texas freeze, where you have this very reductive online conversation that there are just people who don't like either rich people or Californians or both.
Yeah.
Right. And when something befalls them, they will say, "Ha ha, something bad befell you." you deserve it because I've made a moral calculus that you are worthy of that kind of punishment. In the same way that when Texas froze and there was real life or death kind of stuff, and, you know, our friend Brian was living his own personal shining situation because he was afraid that the pipes were going to burst in his studio that he had invested so much money in. People were like, ha ha, fuck Texas. I hate Texas. Like, and you know, look, the internet is the internet. There's a reason why you shouldn't take it all that seriously. It's where sociopathic people go to pass the time when they're too bored or toxic to talk to other people around them physically. But obviously, if you're listening to this, that's probably not great behavior because there are real lives here, and whether or not they are rich lives or poor lives or in California or not, like this, come on. Like, understand that there's a level of abstraction that goes beyond internet points.
There is, and I think the point that I'm trying to make here is that with this particular fire, there's this idea with a lot of our fires, and like, it's not entirely untrue that like, why are you living in the middle of the canyon? Like, it seems like a stupid place to build housing. This is in the city. Like the Pacific Palisades, it's Santa Monica. Like Santa Monica is under evacuation right now, and like Pasadena and Altadena, like these.
If you are not familiar with Southern California landscape, Santa Monica is on the ocean. Like it is the area that is like right there, right on the coast.
This isn't an area that's like irresponsibly like houses dotted in a canyon. Like this is going through the cities. It's one of our worst case scenarios, and we're watching it unfold in real time. So I'm definitely having a case of the sads today, and I'm a little distracted, and my heart just breaks for everyone in California. And so to anyone who's affected, just know that I'm crying with you for sure. So.
Heaton, did you have anything on Trudeau before we get started? Because I know that you are also very broken up about that.
Yeah, you're also having a case of the sads, I can tell.
Yeah, Trudeau and I were in, I can't say the name of it, but it's kind of an eyes wide shut club. And so I see him at a conference twice a year, and you know, we don't agree on everything, but he's a fun dude, and I wish him the best in whatever his next leg is.
His next leg.
He's got two moves, Heaton. He's either in a secret society with them, or he has fucked them or fucked with them.
And sometimes those two cross over.
And oftentimes it's because we had a soft version with the eyes wide shut thing.
Yeah.
From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young.
I'm Jen Briney.
And from Washington, D.C.,
I'm Andrew Heaton.
When we're not wrong on this edition of the program, we will be talking about the congestion pricing that has taken effect in New York City. And Facebook/Meta has ended the fact-checking era. We will go through both of those stories. Heaton, we are going to be joining you up in Washington, D.C. for a live show coming up on the 19th of January, only in a few weeks. We have a bit of a short porch here. Head on over there right now. Eventbrite.com is where you can buy tickets. Our show is going to be Sunday night at 7 p.m. Myself, Jen Briney, Andrew Heaton. And since we're in D.C., I think we might wrangle some special guests. I think maybe we can get a few special guests up on stage. I have some ideas that I'll float with you guys after the show. But are you excited? Are you going to invite all your new DC friends out to see us live?
Actually, I have a friend. He lives in Toronto. He lives in Ottawa, but he's transitioning jobs, and he's a political sort. And he actually is very funny. He's done some open mics, and I was thinking he could do some Canadian humor for us.
Yeah. Very excited for the inauguration. Although we all tried to get press passes.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. Have you heard anything?
Me either.
Nothing.
We all applied on time this time.
We did. But I also know that the credentials are being done through Congress, and the new Congress just started.
They literally, like this week is their first week on the job.
They took their first vote yesterday. So it wouldn't surprise me if this is just going to be a last second.
Oh, no, this is great. Guys, we're in a good position here. You know, like when you've got a thing you really don't want to do, and so you do a bunch of little tasks so you don't have to do it.
Yes.
There's a bunch of things Congress should be doing right now that it doesn't really want to do. So this could be the little task that prolonged. They're like, well, we couldn't tackle the deficit. We had to get tickets to podcasters for the inauguration. Like this could actually be sorted very quickly.
Well, I hope so, because we're getting on a plane very quickly.
Yes. Are you under snow, Heaton? A blizzard hit D.C.
Yes. Yes. So I drove back from Austin via New Orleans. I stayed there for one evening.
Yeah.
What wonderful city. But I love New Orleans. It's a great city. Went there, just stayed for an evening, had dinner, left the following morning. Went to Chattanooga again. Just for
I love Chattanooga.
It's great. Chattanooga's my first time there. It's a wonderful, wonderful place.
Yeah.
I was absolutely smitten with it during the brief period of time I was there. And then I checked the weather conditions and was like, all right, there's a blizzard coming into D.C. Sunday night. I'm coming into D.C. Sunday night, so I'm going to leave so that I get there at least 3 hours before the blizzard hits.
Yeah.
But I didn't check for an unrelated blizzard going through Tennessee from a different direction. So I got hit by that at noon and just had 5 mile an hour for 3 hours. And that weird grime you get. I don't even know what that is when it's snowing, but your car gets like a layer of Crisco all over it. So I'd have to roll down the window and I'd pour a bottle of water on the windshield and then use the wipers and would smear it enough to where I could see. And then whenever the
thing you do.
The road would open up. Well, no, because my windshield wiper fluid had frozen. And so it was just smearing this Crisco.
Oh.
So whenever the road opened up,
happens.
Somebody would just celebrate by driving into a tree. Like it would just like, yay, it's opened up. And then immediately a guy would go into a ditch and be like, there we go again. So I managed to finally puncture through that after several harrowing hours and got into D.C. before the next blizzard. And have been rather enjoying the snow. Wallace has never seen snow before. He likes it. He likes rollicking in the snow. And the streets are reasonably clear. The public transit seems to be working fine. And so it's nice, but, don't wear your nice shoes outside.
My friend Kirk Beto of National Journal, I interviewed him yesterday for the show on Friday, and he said it was like Lord of the Flies at the Whole Foods on Capitol Hill. It was just an absolute, no gods, no masters, only chaos, as everybody grabs the last silken tofu.
Yeah, I've never quite understood that. I've been in DC through multiple snowstorms. I was back here in the snowpocalypse of 2010 and the snowmageddon of 2011, where it was like hip deep. I literally was fighting my way through the snow hip deep to get to my congressional office so that I could answer email from angry old people that were yelling at me. And was there, and everybody would buy up eggs and bread and toilet paper for what would probably be a maximum of 72 hours. And it's always kind of confused me. Like, I understand wanting to get some supplies and stuff, but the sort of we're all going to die on a boat level mentality that happens where I don't know, like if right now, if you shut down my house for 3 days, I've got food for 3 days.
Yeah. Can I'm gonna pivot it just a little bit. You mentioned that Congress began. Mm-hmm. We had the speaker's vote last week. And, of course, it is the best day in political media because C-SPAN has their cameras in the House. And so you can actually see how government gets made, and you can see people cajoling each other. And the photographers were there. You could see, because now all iPhones have loud blaring exactly who's calling on it. So you can see Nancy Mace getting a call from Susie Wiles, Trump's chief of staff, and stuff like that.
You can see Tom Massey getting iced out by everyone in Congress.
Yes, because he was the only one who held firm to his pledge to not vote for Mike Johnson on the first ballot. But I just want to give a shout out to C-SPAN. Because they do the best. Whenever anyone's like, well, how can we be expected to deal with somebody that might be lying or might say something untrue on our airwaves? Do yourself a favor.
Yeah.
Go watch C-SPAN, because you have, and we met many of them at the conventions, some of the most professional broadcast journalists there are that are doing substantive, fact-based interviews with politicians, asking probing, interesting questions that are things that you can build on. They are good knowledge bases. They're not gossip stuff. And then they go to calls that are the most unhinged fucking like college football level lunacy that you will ever hear in your entire life. And they patiently, it's just somebody, speaking of what Andrew was saying, of the same people that call in and yell at their congressperson, they're doing it in between the times that they're calling into C-SPAN. And they're talking about whatever they want to talk about. They're just like, well, I live in Kentucky and I don't support Thomas Massey because he is not in my district, but I know people who know Thomas Massey, and they think he's a good guy. I was thinking about moving to where Thomas Massey is. Like, sir, what do you think about the speaker vote? Well, I don't know why we need a speaker. And it's just like, it doesn't matter, and they keep it professional. They can do it, and I'm going to take a wild guess that they don't get paid as much as Jake Tapper, they don't get paid as much as anybody at these other networks, you can do it too. This is not impossible. C-SPAN does the best possible job.
The best job. I'll never forget the first time I went to C-SPAN and I met one of these people, and I'm not going to out who said this to me. But it was one of these people who sits there and listens to the crazy calls and just does such a good job with like robot face.
Yes.
Like no reaction whatsoever. And so I asked, what are you thinking when you're taking these calls? And he says, well, sometimes I'm thinking this is batshit crazy. And I was like, I knew it.
Yeah, of course.
I knew it.
Of course. Because it is. There's nobody that listens to this and can say anything else. Because, again, this is like SEC college football call-in, like Paul Feinbaum show, just insanity.
Insane people. Yeah.
And yet they handle it.
But it's my favorite thing to do on Washington Journal is to respond to the crazy people. It's the most fun because first of all, I'll get congressional dish listeners that call in and like say nice things about me and I absolutely love them. And then I'll get someone who's never heard of me before and they'll just bring up a question out of left field.
Because they'll talk about whatever they want to talk about.
Yeah.
That's it.
Where it's like, this has nothing to do even with Congress or my show or anything I just said, and I'm supposed to answer this question. And like with the C-SPAN people, I can say whatever I want. They've never told me what I can and cannot say. I think it's pretty clear that they don't want swearing.
Yes.
They've never had to tell me that, but like they don't want swearing. But other than that, if I have a look that says like you are nuts on my face, like it is allowed.
And they will always get people off the line in a professional manner.
Yes, they're so polite.
That doesn't humiliate them, that doesn't belittle them. It's the greatest.
They're really good at we have other callers. Thank you for your thoughts. And they'll cut the person off in the middle of their sentence.
They're very good at that radio thing where it's like, if they pause for long enough, it's like, congratulations, you've just let the ball hit the ground. You're out.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll take your call later.
So
and then
good.
Random person. Do you think that we need a Speaker of the House? Yes. Moving on.
I think
Doug
it should
from
be The Rock.
Idaho. Yeah.
Let me make my case for
these lunatics. Marjorie Taylor crazy. Like it's great.
My garbage man last week came late. The government doesn't work. Like okay, thanks for calling.
I had a job in college where I worked for a defense attorney, and there was a lady, I won't say her name, but she would call every day. She was a really, really nice lady, and she would call and say, I would like you to help me get my Social Security check. Mayor Kirk Humphreys has stopped my Social Security check, and he raped and decapitated me. And
that's a left hook.
I really need that Social Security money. And I would be like, wait, you were decapitated? And she'd say, yes, he murdered me 3 days ago. She was really sweet and was just adamant that she'd been decapitated by Mayor Kirk Humphreys multiple times.
That's amazing.
Someone should look into that.
Yeah.
That's a story.
That's so good.
You want to know what else is a story? This New York City congestion pricing. NYC implemented the controversial pricing system on January 5th, becoming the first U.S. city to do so. The program aims to reduce traffic congestion and generate funds for public transit improvements by charging vehicles entering Manhattan's central business district. The program is expected to generate approximately $15 billion for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority capital projects, aiming to improve public transit infrastructure. Officials estimate a reduction in daily vehicles entering the congestion zone by 15.4% to 19.9%, easing traffic and lowering emissions. The implementation has faced criticism from various groups, including residents living near the congestion zone boundaries and officials from neighboring states like New Jersey, who have expressed concerns about increased traffic and pollution in their areas. Legal challenges have been mounted, and political opposition continues, including one city council member from Queens who just reminded people, please, whatever you do, do not damage the cameras that control the congestion pricing by pushing a green laser into their sensors. Whatever you do, don't do that. That was Vicky Palladino of Queens. Jen, is this worth it?
I mean, I don't think it's going to surprise anyone to hear that I'm all for this. Like, especially in a city like New York, that is a place where space is valuable. Like, physical space is valuable. So for people who are commuting into the city for whatever reason, there's a lot of people that bring their own cars. I mean, if you think about people standing up, the smallest car that I can think of is at least 8 people, if the amount of space that it's taking on the ground. So if you're going to take up that much space while you're driving and getting around, and then taking up the same amount of space when you're not even using the damn thing, when you're parking it, I think there should be costs associated with that. And if you don't like it, use the public transportation system that exists, or don't go into New York City. But I think that the idea that it should be free to take up that much space with a transportation...
Well, there still are tolls to get into New York City.
Yeah.
Before the congestion pricing.
Yeah. But the whole point of congestion is that space is limited and valuable. There's not enough for everyone. And so I think that there should be a cost there if you want to take up that much space for your transportation, because there are ways to get around that don't take up that much space and therefore won't cost as much. And if you don't want to do those things, then pay for the space you're taking up. I think it makes perfect sense.
Heaton, the car fascist, has spoken. What do you say?
I have a concurring opinion with Jen. If there weren't traffic, I wouldn't care if you were driving a car or not. But there is traffic, and this is a kind of a supply and demand thing. There's a limited amount of bandwidth on the road. There's too much demand for it, and so the price is going up. And the price is either going to be money that you're paying or time that you're paying. It's going to be one of those two things. So this makes a lot of sense to me. I think that this is a intelligent way to handle it. Singapore's done something similar. I would do it a little bit differently in that I'd like it to be more dynamic than it is. I believe in Singapore it actually is dynamic pricing, where rather than just saying between 9 and 7 p.m. it's going to be $15, they actually have it fluctuate based on how much traffic's going in at any given time. Because that is basically what we're trying to do, is we're trying to incentivize people to either carpool, use public transit, or if you can go earlier or go later, do that. That way there's not these bottleneck phenomenon. So, yeah, I think that this is a smart move. The thing that I'm really intrigued by is the reactions to this and how people have reacted to it. The governor, it becomes a massive complex of things that you got to go through in order to make this happen. They started working on this back in 2019, maybe 2018.
Yeah.
Because it is a federal highway, or there's federal highway funding that goes through New Jersey and New York. You have to have federal permission to do this. So Congress had to get involved in order for this to happen, or at least the federal government had to green light it. That was part of it. Because there's federal funding involved, it's subject to NEPA, which is the environmental impact statements that you're required to do with anything on any type of federal activity or federal lands. And that's what everybody's been jumping onto. You have the United Teachers Federation trying to stop this through NEPA. You have firefighters and police unions trying to stop it through NEPA. And then just unrelated to NEPA, you have Hochul delaying it till after the election because they figured that this was going to be fairly unpopular. So I think that this whole thing is kind of an interesting way of looking at how do people throw roadblocks in front of stuff that they don't want to do, because you're seeing that on so many different levels. But overall, though, I think there's a lot of traffic congestion. Tax traffic. That's basically what they're doing here, is they're saying when there's traffic, we're going to tax it. You get less of what you tax, and that means you're going to get less traffic.
So this is the way that it is implemented. With passenger vehicles, a base toll of $9 is charged during peak hours, weekdays 5 a.m. to 9 p.m., and weekends 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. For vehicles entering Manhattan south of 60th Street during off-peak hours, that toll is reduced by 75%. For trucks and buses, higher fees apply, with small trucks and buses charged $14.40 and large trucks $21.60 during peak hours. For taxis and ride-sharing services, yellow taxis incur a surcharge of 75 cents per trip, while high volume for higher vehicles are charged $1.50 per trip. There are exemptions for emergency vehicles, specialized city vehicles, and buses with regular public routes. And low-income drivers, so drivers earning less than $50,000 annually, can register for 50% discount on peak tolls after their first 10 trips into the congestion zone each month. So I guess you have to keep applying 10 trips in.
That bit sounds complicated. The bit that I find kind of amusing is, again, the police and firefighters union said, actually, they didn't go on NEPA. I apologize. It was the teachers union that went on NEPA. The firefighters and police union said, this is going to make emergency response time slower. And I have a hard time getting to that. If emergency vehicles have been explicitly granted exemptions for any of this, and there is less traffic, I don't know how that would. But it's just people don't want to pay it, and so they're finding any method to not make this happen other than saying, I just don't want to pay it. I would like other people to pay it. I don't want to pay it. The $50,000 thing, Justin, that terrific, but that sounds to me like it's not. I don't know. That sounds complicated enough to me. I doubt very many people are going to wind up availing themselves to that. That sounds more of how do we make ourselves feel better about it.
Heaton, would you describe living in New York City as expensive, moderate, or cheap?
I would say incredibly expensive, to the point where I would tell people there's an oxygen tax if you're going to enter the city of New York.
Mm-hmm. So do you think adding a regular high margin tax on things like leaving the city and coming back into it would be popular or unpopular?
I think it'd be unpopular, but you're getting taxed on time or you're getting taxed on money. And the downside to the tax
one comes pretty cheap to people, and the other is less cheap to people.
Yeah, does it? I don't know. Like if we're looking at this in terms of economic bottom line here, I think that economically this will wind up better too. You have to factor in fuel efficiency. You have to factor in the amount of time that's just stalled there. That increases labor costs. That increases transportation costs. I think that this is a good policy. I get why it's unpopular, Justin, because this is how people work. I would like to get lots of stuff. I would prefer other people pay for it. That's how everybody works, right? So I'm not surprised that a tax on anything would be unpopular, particularly in New York City. And I don't dispute that it's a very expensive place. But also, I'm going to steal a joke from my friend Jimmy Fela. This is the only city where bank robbers leave on foot. Like, even L.A. has less traffic than New York. The traffic is massive. There needs to be something there. Now, part of it would be making the public transit work better, which I'm all in favor of. I think it's an absolute fuck cluster. The way the MTA is set up is because the MTA is not just within the confines of New York City. It is a state apparatus and not a municipal agency. So that is to say the people that are running the New York City transit system, the metro system, are not actually appointed by the city of New York. They're appointed by the governor. That's weird. That's messed up. The governor will sometimes take money from the New York transit system. Who is the guy that was cousins with the guy that was on CNN and they'd fight, like they joke during the
Cuomo brothers.
Cuomo. I quit liking Cuomo.
Future New York City mayor Andrew Cuomo.
Stop it, really?
When Cuomo was governor, he pilfered the MTA to take money out of it to bail out a ski lodge in upstate New York because it was
seems reasonable.
State, yeah. Can we all agree? There's no way a fucking ski lodge could ever be handled by the private sector. That's definitely something you need to have the public sector involved. There's lots of things that I would change, but I stand on my point here. Look, traffic is an externality. It's a bad externality. It makes sense to tax it to make congestion better.
So the one thing that I would say as a one-time resident of New York City, I did not spend a lot of time there. I moved to Hoboken and then eventually moved to Florida, like everybody from New York eventually does. The MTA sucks. It's awful. If you are generating that money and pouring it into the MTA, this is not a screw public transportation argument. This organization has very, very deep problems that have not been dealt with and have been vexing to New York City citizens for decades. But if you are generating billions of dollars for the MTA, I would not be shocked if in 5 years the New York Times headline is billions of dollars wasted by the MTA. Yeah. Officials say we have no idea where it went.
Right.
Because that has been the story about the MTA forever.
So isn't the solution to that better management as opposed to just let everyone drive?
Well, I mean, again, it's like we get into these situations where there's no one binary thing. It's like, does the MTA need to be reformed? And there have been pushes to maybe put it under New York City government or to find different ways to handle it. Yes, 100%. There's no question that needs to be changed because the New York City subway system is mismanaged. It is mismanaged and poorly run. Should there be congestion pricing? It's kind of a separate thing, but unfortunately right now we're in the situation, the reality where the money from the congestion pricing is going to go into this inefficient system. And what I think is going to happen is that people are going to be pissed about the congestion pricing and they're going to be upset because the subways haven't gotten any better.
New Yorkers are going to be upset about things? I'm shocked.
Oh, the massholes arrived.
They're such a pleasant people.
I'll stick up for the New York. I like New Yorkers. I like New York. They're going to be angry. I think the reason for that, on top of
I love it.
Nobody likes taxes. People hate surge pricing, and like, look,
yes.
surge pricing makes sense. Like dynamic pricing is a good system, but it's deeply unpopular because it just viscerally pisses people off, and that seems to be a gene I didn't get. And so I'm like, yeah, like surge pricing with Uber makes sense. If it's raining and it's horrible outside and Uber drivers don't want to go outside, you keep raising it until they decide they'll go outside and pick you up. Like you get, it costs more, but everybody gets more of it. It's the same with happy hour. It's the same with matinee performances. Like dynamic pricing, you're trying to adjust for supply and demand. That's what we're doing here in terms of traffic. I think this makes sense. I would pair it with all sorts of reforms going on in public transit, as you brought up, Justin. I would make it locally run. I think that's weird. There's a lot of fluff that's built in there. One of my friends works for the subway system. Love him. Glad everybody's. I don't want to. Everybody that's doing a necessary job, I want them to do it, and I want them to be well paid for it. But the subway union will advocate for superfluous people on the subways in order to create jobs there. So there's a certain amount of fluff that goes into the public largesse. And then there's also just the downside of it's just such a massive, massive system that it's going to break down all the time. It's probably unavoidable. I don't like that, but about 5 million people use public transit in New York City every day. I don't know what the ratio is between the subway and buses. Let's say it's 2 million people that use the subway system. It takes one guy to fall into the subway tracks or one guy to light the subway tracks on fire with a cigarette to shut everything down for half an hour. And unfortunately, that stuff's really difficult to get around because if you want to, say, like put a barricade wall there, a lot of them are too small to do it. You'd have to uproot everything over a 10-year period. So some of it is just poorly run because of the circumstances of where we're at. But yeah, like absolutely make it work better.
Yeah. The other thing is that if you were just to look at the MTA's Yelp rating over the past 5 years, it has not exactly gained stars. Like there's been high profile cases. There's been persistent, very colorful recorded versions of violence. There was a woman that was lit on fire 2 weeks ago. Obviously, You had the Neely situation that we covered on the podcast a few weeks ago, where there's been people being pushed onto the tracks. It's just not been a safe place. It has scared people away from public transportation, as it has in like the Bay Area with BART, which is continually sort of become less used as people find it to be less safe. And so this is an unfortunate time, regardless of whether or not you think that congestion pricing is a good idea. This is an unfortunate time to start it because faith in the subway is not at an all-time high right now.
But I think if more people are using it, they'll be incentivized to care about it and to demand the changes that are needed. Because if the people that are the most politically powerful are never using the system, they don't give a shit if they're all driving around in their private cars. So I do think that one comes with the other. Like, I do think that people care more when they use a system, and this will probably cause more people to use the system. And I hope that they take initiative and demand political changes.
I think, unfortunately, the congestion pricing is not going to change the people at the top that are still using private transportation. I don't think it will change. My guess is there's a bunch of high-ranking people in city government that are going to have city cars that are exempt from this anyway. I would be astonished if there were not carve-outs for government workers that are not subject to it. So I'm in favor of the congestion pricing. I'm in favor of fixing the public transit. But the idea of if we force people to use public transit, that it will just get better because there's more people in it. I don't think that's. I wouldn't put a lot of faith in that.
No one's being forced to use it. But what I'm saying, like, it doesn't even have to be rich people. Like, I don't think the people that are represented in Gossip Girl are going to start using the subway. But I do think that there's going to be more middle class people that would use it if they see their bills. Like I'm looking at $9 a day. So if you're going into the city 5 days a week, like that adds up. You might end up taking the subway more often. And I think the more people come into contact with the subway system, the more they are incentivized to vote accordingly or to speak up when they have problems or to like submit the surveys that the MTA puts out. Like
about 55% of people in New York City use public transit every week. So I think there's already a very large constituency of people using public transit. I don't think there is a huge untapped amount of people in New York City that aren't already familiar with the public transit. Like, there's
so why do we
definitely
think the traffic would get better? How would they get into New York?
They'd probably be using both. I don't think it's that there's 100% car people and 100% public transit people, and they're going to go on the subway and they've never encountered it before. Like there's already familiarity with it, and there's already a very huge. There's a large amount of people using it. If there's 5 million people using public transit, and 55% of the population. That's there's 5 million people that are already a part of this. So I don't think that more people using it is going to be a significant difference than what we're already having right now.
Heaton, when you were living in New York City, would you describe the subways as crowded, moderate, or sparse during the working hours of 9 to 5?
Both. So during
I gave you 3 options. So.
During peak traffic time, Justin, it would be really, really crowded and very sparse because you will see crowded, and then you'll see a completely unoccupied subway car, and then you will go into that subway car, and then there's a reason that it's unoccupied, Justin. So you would have both.
Do you think that this will lead? So if the goal is to put more people on the subway, do you think that might bring up frustration that there's overcrowding on the subway?
That's one potentiality, Justin, but there are other potentialities too, which is maybe
go ahead, Mr. Wizard.
You are flexible on when you are using your car, or you're paying to use your car. So I don't know that it'll automatically mean everybody's taking the subway. It might be that instead of going at 9 a.m., you go at 8 a.m., or instead of going at 5 p.m., you go at 6 p.m.
Or maybe people will stop coming into New York. There's plenty of people that have jobs that they do in New York that don't need to be done in New York, like office workers in particular, the laptop class. Like maybe they will just become remote workers more often. Maybe instead of coming in 5 days. I think they all already moved
to Boca. Like that already happened.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying that like it doesn't necessarily mean more public transportation.
I mean, that's part of the goal, right?
I don't know.
Part
I
of
don't
the
know what the
goal
goal
is to push more people to public transit.
I think that is a result, but I think the goal is quite clearly to reduce traffic.
Because otherwise, you wouldn't be putting the money that you gain from it to the MTA.
Well, I mean,
you'd be using it for other
stuff. If you need, I think that the money going to MBT, is it? It's not
MTA, Metropolitan Transit Authority.
I think that's just making sure that there's another option for people who do want to go to New York. I don't think it necessarily means that the goal is to push people to public transportation, but if you're going to make it more expensive to drive, then you need to give a better alternative. And so investing that money in public transportation, which, if you're just going in as like your one body and taking up that much space, that does seem to be the solution for the people that are currently bringing enough space for 8 people and occupying it by themselves. So I understand why the investment would be there but if the goal is to get rid of traffic, that would just mean fewer cars, fewer trips into the city. It doesn't necessarily like they might want people to just stop coming to New York all the time. Like maybe they just don't want that many people.
I mean, is that a good goal for a city? Don't you want more people to come into your city? Because you have businesses that you want them to patronize. You have.
I don't know.
Right?
I mean, do you necessarily want people coming in and doing nothing? Like, I don't know. I don't know.
What is that use case? I come in at 9 o'clock. I don't do jack shit, and then I leave at 4:30.
Okay, here's a use case. The people that are coming in and using Central Park instead of going for a run in Hoboken. So it's like there are people that are not generating any economic.
Nobody's doing that. Hoboken's beautiful.
Okay, I don't even want to be a part of this conversation anymore. I don't give a fuck about New York. You guys do whatever the hell you want.
Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong is where you need to go if you want to support the program. And for your money, you get a bonus episode. And this week, we're going to be talking about the Global Traffic Scorecard. Yes, friends. They have measured all the traffic in all the different cities, and we are going to find out who is the most gridlocked, not just in America, but around the world. That's coming up on our Patreon episode. All right. On January 7th, Meta announced the discontinuation of its third-party fact-checking programs on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Instead, the company plans to implement a community note system similar to the model used on Twitter, now X. Meta will replace the professional fact-checkers with the volunteer-based system where users can add context or corrections to posts that they find misleading. The company intends to lift restrictions on certain mainstream topics, such as immigration and gender, to promote more open discourse. Zuckerberg emphasized in a video the return to free expression, acknowledging that previous moderation efforts led to excessive censorship and errors. Meta also plans to move its trust and safety teams from California to Texas, aiming to address concerns about political bias in content moderation. And this is a decision that has not been without its criticism from safety advocates and the fact-checking organizations that were paid to provide these services, who fear that this will lead to increased misinformation and harmful content. They argue that relying on community-driven moderation will be less effective than professional fact-checkers. Mr. Andrew Heaton, does this make the internet better or worse?
Well, I admit I'm a bit confused. I seem to recall the head of Facebook previously going to Congress to assure everybody they weren't censoring anyone. So I'm not entirely sure why he needs to now come on and go, you know what, we've decided not to censor anyone anymore. It almost sounds like they were at some point censoring people. I think this is a great move. I don't trust the fact checkers. Let me rephrase that. I don't trust gatekeepers of information. I think fact checkers are fine. If you want to have a supplement, if you want to have a frame, a tag, something where you're like, hey, we think this, okay, that's fine. I like the community notes on Twitter. That makes sense to me. What I don't like is having fact checkers that can come in and stop you from doing it. And there's going to be some amount of bullshit they catch. There's going to be some amount of chicanery and quackery that they catch, but there's also going to be legitimate viewpoints that are going to be discriminated against that ought to be a part of the conversation. And the whole underpinnings of free speech is the popular stuff doesn't need to be protected. You don't have to protect popular stuff. You have to protect the cranks. You have to protect the nutballs. And I think, yeah, a community note style approach is a way better way to do it. I got granted, it's not Facebook, but I got censored by YouTube. Only time I've ever been censored on YouTube. I did an episode on RFK when he was still running for president in 2024. And I was very clear. I'm not saying my opinion. I am not saying that there's medical veracity to this. I got three vaccines for COVID. I'm vaccinated. I think you should get vaccinated. Like, I did all that stuff. Then I went, okay, noting that this is a man running for president that's going to have some statistical import, very likely, on the effect of the effect of the election. And he's very big on vaccines. So let's actually dive into what he thinks about vaccines. And I walked through, this is what he said, this is what he thinks. And it got banned by YouTube. And I went on and I appealed it. And I went, hey, I think your algorithm caught this. I am not saying this, and I do disclaim this is his opinion, and it's not a medical authority, and you should talk to your doctor. And they were like, nope, radioactive. I think that for the minuscule amount of people that would have otherwise seen that on YouTube, that they were deprived of information that would have been useful to them. They might have said, I think he's a nut job. But I don't think the way to handle bad speech is to restrict it. It's to increase good speech. It's to respond with good ideas and good arguments. So I applaud Facebook going in this direction rather than having gatekeepers.
Jen, does this make the internet better or worse?
It's probably going to be exactly the same. I mean, Andrew, one thing that you said it's a little confusing to me is that I don't know which hearings you were watching with Zuckerberg, because the hearings I watched and highlighted on Congressional Dish, he was going before Congress and promising that they were censoring because they were trying to crack down on misinformation because the Democrats were terrified of it.
I was just making a joke about Zuckerberg.
He was just funning.
A dick and a hypocrite.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to look too much into that, Jen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because that was a promise that they were making. And so I think this is just a different way of doing it. And like, based on the experience on Twitter, I think it's been fine to have community notes. And it's like, they're taking factcheck.org out of the process apparently. But if someone wanted to link to factcheck.org in order to fact check a post. That is still available to them.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be exactly the same. Like, we just don't know how to handle bullshit on the internet. And I'm 100% with Andrew in that, like, the best way to tackle bullshit is to prove it wrong, which means you have to have all the information available and out there in order to do so. So I don't think it's really going to change much. The only thing about this that gave me any emotions whatsoever is Zuckerberg saying, well, we're going to change our moderation people from Californians to Texans, as if Texans or right-wingers in general are now bastions of truth, which just is so untrue. And it does seem to be, since Trump's election, there is this idea that, like, the right wing, like, they are the ones who are telling the truth, and, like, woke is bad, right wing good. Like, that's swinging the pendulum entirely too far in the other direction. So it's like, if you're going to have these moderation people at all, have them in all 50 states. We know that Facebook workers are remote, so, like, put them everywhere if you have to. And that way, if there's a post about Montana, you have a person in Montana that can talk about it. But just saying, like, oh, it's going to move to this other
Jen,
state, like,
it makes you feel better. I don't think that they're going to have right wingers. I think they're going to have liberals.
Austinites.
Facebook located in Austin, Texas. Like,
Yes.
You're just having Austin do it instead of San Francisco.
It's just going to be other people who live in your building that have our exact.
They're not doing it for ideological reasons. They're almost certainly doing it because it's cheaper in Texas.
Even if that's the reality of it, the perception that they're trying to get out is, we hear you that there's too many blue state Californians involved, so we're going to put Texans involved. Like, the perception is there'll be more Team Red involved in this. That's what they're trying to say.
And I don't think that's going to happen at all. I think it's going to be a very technocratic leaning progressive crowd that would otherwise be in San Francisco that's located in Austin, Texas. Now, what would be a good call is, anytime you're dealing with information, if you were ideologically homogenous, you have blind spots. If I, Andrew Heaton, am in a room full of people that I broadly agree with, I'm going to miss stuff, which is why it's good for me to talk to Justin or Jen and have that coming in, so that I am challenged and I have other ideas coming in all the time. So if they were to do something like that, where instead of just relocating their office to Austin, Texas, and have it be slightly hotter, they were to actually make an attempt to bring in different viewpoints, that would be laudable. I would be all in favor of having multiple viewpoints in whatever their community notes operation is.
But even if, like, the two announcements being made at the same time also makes no sense to me. Either the community is now going to be moderating stuff, or you're going to have Facebook insiders in California and or Texas. So what are you talking about?
So the trust and safety team, right, which is a division of Facebook that looks at all of this kind of stuff, they will now, the office will not be in Palo Alto or wherever the Facebook is. It will now be likely in Austin, right?
Because that's and second in Austin, Texas.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's the paper pushers that just run all of moderation, that make the decisions. 99% of it is about gore, violent imagery that should not be on the platform, and child porn. That's 99% of that team's job. The fringe element that becomes a political football is, how do we respond to, in many cases, government pressure to take certain things down? And that's where I think you saw things get a little bit too aggressive throughout the Trump era, and especially COVID, of, like, what is dangerous misinformation that needs to be taken down.
Yeah.
And then the other question of, like, okay, well, is this virulently anti-immigration argument nativist or racist? And should we put some kind of label on it? Should there be a community note if it's actively untrue? Or should there be a stop to it so it doesn't get any traffic on these platforms? That's what trust and safety does. I agree with you. I think that this is entirely a PR move, as if to say, don't worry, now it's going from, one super lefty place to some place that is not coded super lefty, but it's Austin. It's the most left-leaning place that exists in Texas. It's probably to the left. I haven't checked the stats. More left than the vast majority of
Are you guys guessing
cities.
that it's Austin, or do you actually know this?
I don't believe that Facebook has offices in Dallas or Houston, and I don't think that they have offices in Abilene.
But we
or
do know they have
Waco.
here.
They do have offices in Austin. So I'm guessing that is my educated guess. He did not make any specific comments on it. I think this is great. I have long hated the fact checker system that they had. I thought it was very imperfect. It essentially relied on the trust and safety team to elect a council of learned elders that decided what was good and what was bad. And that puts a lot of pressure on the trust and safety team to make sure that that is quote unquote balanced, which is, I think, impossible, especially when they were deciding to dive into things that I think are quite simply unfact checkable. Like political speech, by and large, is not fact checkable. It is like Tom Merritt. I was on DTNS yesterday. Tom Merritt said, it's like trying to provide a fact check on whether or not you can out Pizza the Hut. Like it's always based in a kernel of truth with wild hyperbole around it. So it's like to point out that there's wild hyperbole around it is kind of redundant. To highlight the kernel of truth is like, okay, but you're kind of missing the abstraction there. Just throw things on top of it. I think the community notes thing is good, if just for one issue. Social media has long suffered because it was all admins and no moderators in the message board sense. You have an admin that is the voice of God. You can just delete somebody off the platform. And if that's your only way of street level action, then it's always going to be heavy-handed. What you need are moderators, volunteers who care about the platform, that are going to be dumb and enforce the rules. Everyone hates moderators, but they're necessary to maintain order. So you're not always appealing to the top level person to say this person needs to either be demonetized or have their account taken away. Yell at the moderators because you don't like their issue. And look, community notes is imperfect. You know, during that speaker election, Matt Gaetz had put out a tweet earlier in the day and said, Mike Johnson is going to be elected on the first ballot. You may not like it, but that's going to happen. There was a moment where it looked like, and all the major networks believed it was going to go to a second ballot. And so Matt Gaetz's thing got community noted. And it said, in fact, there was a second ballot. There wasn't. It's imperfect. It stayed up there for a while. It's harmless, though. Yeah. Like, it's good when something gets noted. It brings other attention to it. It's a permission structure for people to criticize, to take more. They don't have to be perfect. They're supposed to be something that you can hand wave away if it doesn't get it perfectly right. I think it's great.
Well, and you can still see the original statement.
Yes.
Which is what I like about it, instead of just deleting it and making it so that no one can know what was originally said. That's my favorite thing about it.
Do we think that there is something to both Amazon, like Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg becoming more right-coded as they've gotten jacked?
Like they started listening to too much Rogan and
yeah, or just testosterone. They're just eating more red meat. They're taking Alpha Brain, whatever kind of meathead stuff. They're just doing 50 squats in the morning, and they're like, I don't know, maybe there are two genders.
I mean, there is a culture around it. I think that I would be surprised if they were
because Zuckerberg is broed out right now.
Yeah, and so is Bezos. Yeah, and I do think that. I mean, I know in my own, health stuff lately, I've been lifting weights, and so I'm listening to more Andrew Huberman and Peter Attia and people I've discovered on Rogan to help me figure out how to do this. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if these guys were doing the same thing, because there's a culture around it. I think that's part of the fun of it, because weightlifting on its own is kind of boring, but the fact that other people do it and you can talk about it and strategy, there's a whole community to the people that do it. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's
part of it.
Yeah, because they seem to like being, guys who are successful in that arena, in the we are now jacked arena.
Because look at pictures of Zuckerberg from 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And look at him now. He looks like the dude that would be kicking sand in the nerdy face of the guy he was 7 years ago.
Yeah, and now he's wakeboarding
and he looks like a Dominican barber. He just has he's wearing a single gold chain. He speaks more confidently.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the cynic here and say that I think the heads of large corporations are largely interested in the welfare of their corporation and the money coming into it, and the fact that Trump has won is why they're sounding more red-coded.
But they didn't do it in 2016. This has been
going on for a while.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm me, relentless critic of corporate America. I think that there's, if it's the popular thing to do and there's a big tech space to do it, that you're going to see a certain amount of veering that direction. Like Trump won, and then you're seeing lots of statements from tech companies that are going like, well, we want to be able to work with them. But last week you said he was a fascist that would ruin America. Like, no, but now though he's won, so we didn't really mean it. We're going to play ball.
I actually kind of think that it is politically motivated. All right, here's my conspiracy theory. You ready for my conspiracy theory?
Yeah.
It is politically motivated, but it has less to do with Trump and it has more to do with Biden and the security state that kind of like was sort of very entrenched when he came in, that you had a lot of asks of like, take this down, do this. And and a lot of these companies went along with it. And then they were like, okay, cool. So we get something in return, and they're like, no, we're actually going to clamp down on AI like even more than we would have otherwise, and we're going to like do X, Y, and Z. And they're like, oh wait, so we have to do everything you say, even if our consumers are mad about it, but we don't really like get anything out of it. Like we don't get a most favored nations kind of status. And they were like, yep, that's the way it works.
What they're getting and what they've been promised is the current legal structure around Section 230 remaining, which gives them that immunity. Because watching these hearings, it was all threats from the Democrats. If you don't do these things,
Yes.
we will get rid of your immunity for what your users post. And so
Trump has threatened that at times too.
he has, but now he and the head of X are best friends and neighbors, apparently. It's all fucking weird. But I think that
Musk is living in an Airstream on the Mar-a-Lago property, apparently.
yeah, $2,000 a night. But yeah, so they're good friends. And now Trump is the owner of Truth Social, which was not the case in his first administration. So I think when it comes to social media moderation, he is probably seeing this from a completely different side now. But I've seen nothing but threats. There's been no carrots promised to these companies.
It's do all this
or else 230 is gone and so is your business.
You just know that you're helping the good guys. You're helping the good guys.
And also, like,
you're contributing to the good guys.
And Elizabeth Warren has like threatened to break up, various companies. Like there has not been a lot of like, here's the promised land. There's been a lot of do this or else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right. We're not wrong pod at gmail.com. Hokel, I hardly nokel. We're not wrong pod at gmail.com is where you send emails. Happy anniversary, Jen writes. Can confirm New Year's Eve is an excellent anniversary. My wife and I were also married on 12/31/2010. We had fireworks at our ceremony. We have fireworks on every anniversary, and everyone is always throwing a party everywhere we go. Maybe not in our honor specifically, but who's to say? It's a little difficult with little kids because obviously no one's available to babysit if we want to get away, but we still manage.
I love that. That's the same exact anniversary as Joe and I. And I love that they love their anniversary too, because we had people that were pretty upset about it when we said we were getting married on New Year's Eve, because they were like, that's
You're
an
ruining
expensive
New Year's Eve.
No, it was more like, that's an expensive time to travel. Like, why can't you do it in August? Because we can't come. And I'm like, I don't think that my anniversary, which is going to be my anniversary for the rest of my life, should be a factor. Like, I shouldn't make my decision whether or not random guests could come. We're really happy that we picked that date, even though it was difficult for some of our wedding guests, and actually a lot of people that didn't come I don't even talk to anymore. So bye.
Nailed it.
But yeah, I mean, here we are 14 years later, still loving that being our anniversary for just this reason. Like, we don't have to do anything.
Party's already thrown.
I've been married 3 times, and I kept fucking up on the third one because I remember we were both in March, but it was March 14th and March 18th, and like what I should have done is just picked one date and then gone with that. Also, scuba diving accident. I loved her very much. Nothing insidious there. Let's move on.
Okay.
Third-party stats writes, Justin in a previous episode brought up libertarian votes, and Jen has brought up imaginary votes in the middle. In 2016, just over 7 million people voted third party. The libertarian vote was just under 4.5 million. Trump had just under 63 million votes. In 2020, third-party votes fell to 2.9 million. 1.86 million to the libertarian. Trump was up to 74 million, but so was Biden over Hillary. It's really hard to tell with this election where the votes went, but third-party voters dropped significantly. 2024, third-party votes were back at 3.1 million, Libertarians' votes down to 650,000, and Trump votes went up to 77.3 million. Now, I send you all this because there seems to be a trend that there it was a real third party vote. In particular, the Libertarian vote had decided to lean toward Trump. Make of that what you will.
I think there's two things to that. One, the Libertarian Party this time around was actively promoting Trump. I mean,
yes.
Like this is not anything that I'm not speaking out of school. This is well known, and they'll just tell you the people that were running the Libertarian Party were not trying to get votes. Previously, the Libertarian Party was just maybe we can hit 5%. That's what they were thinking.
Yeah.
And if we hit 5%, we'll be a real party. That was not what was going on at this time. So I think that's part of it. The other thing, and I don't like what I'm about to say, but it's something that gives me pause. I like the whole narrative of the two parties suck, and therefore everybody's becoming an independent, and they are waning in popularity, and third party movements will continue to grow until the system reforms. That's what I want to have happen, right? There's a different school of thought that goes something like this. Third parties work well when the two major parties are indistinguishable. So the reason, by this logic, the reason that Ross Perot did particularly well was that Clinton and Bush were not that different, and that there were a lot of voters that didn't really, they saw two kind of centrist Republican and Democratic candidates. They didn't really see a big difference between them. I think most people do see a difference, rightly or wrongly. They do see a difference. They perceive a difference between Trump and Kamala Harris or Trump and Joe Biden. And for that reason, that sort of, they're both exactly the same, I'm going to vote third party, gets sucked out of the room. And instead it becomes this apocalyptic red team or blue team phenomenon that does seem very different. And that could account for why there's declining third party participation.
Cool Girls for Harris writes, I suspected you can tell a bit about a person's high school experience by their reaction to the weird comments. As a longstanding member of the Weird Kids Club, I think that what we saw in this election is what happens when a group decides to embrace their identity that would otherwise be denigrating. This works especially well with somebody like Trump, whose whole shtick is creating a big tent for people who feel like they've been shut out of politics. It really amplifies the message of, do you feel like nobody in Washington will fight for people like you? Vote for Trump. He's an outsider too, and he's not afraid to speak his mind.
Yeah, that's what I said last week. I think that is absolutely correct. I think that there was the outsider mentality is going to appeal more to the outcast weird people, and those people are weird is going to appeal more to the popular kids.
I just can't believe that it worked. Like, he's the former president of the United States. He's running around with all the billionaires and rich people and Republican, like, he is the Republican Party. So how can he be a fucking outsider when he is that guy? He is a returning president. Just like the scam that he was able to pull on his voters is amazing to me. Like, just in so many ways, they just ignored who he actually is and projected whoever they wanted him to be onto.
I mean, that's politics, though.
But with Trump, it's just next level. The fact that, like, working class people think that him and his band of billionaires, like the owners of all these companies, are going to be like fighting for the worker now, is just such clear horseshit.
Well, but also it's like, look at that binary. Like, do you go with the laptop, the exclusive laptop class, or the owners? Right? Like, it's not really like a gigantic choice for the underclass. So
this is where my career becomes a problem, because I have read the bills and I know how horrible the Republicans have been for workers the entire times. I have the receipts. The Democrats have written bills that would be legit good for workers. They wrote the Affordable Care Act. So even though, like, it's not working and it's a mess.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing was, before that, if you didn't work for a corporation, you couldn't even get health insurance. So it's, and you didn't have the.
As somebody who tried to buy private health insurance over the last month, we're back. We're back to that.
Well, yeah, because it's been systematically broken over the last decade, because from the minute it was passed, the Republicans said, we are going to destroy this, and they have. So congratulations. I don't think that the idea was ever really going to work that well. I think it can work in a state like Massachusetts because it's small. But that's just one example. Like, here's an example I bring up all the time. The Save American Workers Act. This is what the Republicans think will save American workers. Right now, if you work in the United States for more than 30 hours a week, you are considered full-time, and your employer has to give you health insurance. If the Republicans had their way, they would change that threshold to 40, making 40 hours a week the minimum you have to work in order to get health insurance, which means your boss could schedule you for 39 hours a week, call you part-time, and not give you health insurance. That's how they save the American worker, and I've seen shit like this from them for years. So it's like, when you look at the details, it's clear to me that Republican voters, if they're voting as workers, don't know who the Republicans are. And I have seen the Democrats fighting back against these bills. The Democrats vote in unison against these bills. So when I look at the details, and that's what frustrates me about our politics, is like they don't even talk about the details in their rallies or in their commercials or whatever. Like they don't bring this shit up. They really should. But when you're looking at like who's actually doing the things that are going to help workers, it is not the Republicans. It is not Donald Trump. And yet they came out as workers and voted for the man. I just think that the scam it's impressive. That's all I'm saying. Is I'm impressed.
I have two points keying off of that. The first one is I'm not familiar with the Save American Workers Act, but I can think of a good faith argument for what you're describing, Jen. When Obamacare came in, if I'm remembering this correctly, there was a rule put in place that if you worked 30 hours, you had to have your health care covered. What happened as a result of that was that a lot of employers just dropped people down to 29 hours. So the result for those people was that they had less hours and they didn't have health care. It didn't benefit them at all. So I could see that being to rectify a problem of there's still going to be an impulse to lower costs. Is this having unintended consequences? Again, I've not read the bill, so I don't know, but I can see a good faith argument for that.
Wait. I don't understand. How is it good faith to enable someone to call someone part-time when they work 39 hours a week?
The reality is that if I am an employer and I'm an evil employer and all I care about is making money, and I'm required to pay for your health care, which is going to increase your cost to me by about 30%, I can just drop you down to 29 hours and hire more people that are not full-time employees. So I end up saving more money. Now, all of those people have jobs, but they have less hours, they have less money, and they don't have health care. So that can be a consequence of it. The motivations can be bad for the employer either way, but the law is such that it can be creating it can be causing less workable hours and deprivation of health care. If that is the case, then you want to potentially rectify it.
But how is it good for a worker to have the rectifying be that your minimum amount that you have to work every week is now 40 in order to be getting your health? Like, I think all that's going to happen is that full-time workers are going to end up not getting health insurance, obviously, because like at 40 hours, that's where we're supposed to be getting overtime. So it basically means unless you're working overtime every single week, you're not considered a full-time employee, and therefore they can get out of paying your benefits.
Right.
Like that, you can see how that helps the owners. How does that help the workers?
I totally see. Well, okay, if I'm the worker, I see what you're saying. Let's acknowledge a corporation that goes, I want to deprive you of health care and salaries so I can have more money is being antisocial, is being greedy. All right, let's just, yes, I'm taking that as a given in this conversation. If I, as the employee, am now reduced in my hours to the point where I am earning less money and I don't have health care, I have not been benefited. So there can be unintended consequences to well-intentioned bills.
But all I'm hearing is this is a way of weaseling out of giving the employees the health insurance. Because like,
if they're still not getting the health insurance and they're working less hours, I'm not sure that they would be in a better position.
The point of the law is that the employees are supposed to get health insurance. It's a part of the law. If we are going to, in this country, as we've chosen to, which I think you and I both hate this, but like having your employment be how you get your health insurance, to have a bill like this that says that the employer doesn't have to pay for health insurance for people who are, in all intents and purposes, full-time, it's just getting them out of that providing of the benefit. Like, unless we're going to actually make it so that those workers are getting health insurance on their own in a way that matters, because right now, like, you can buy your own insurance, but we all know how expensive that is. Like, this is just a weaseling out of employers getting to pay or getting. This is a way of employers to weasel their way out of the requirement to provide health insurance. Like, I was one of those people that you seem to be talking about. In Hawaii, it's different there. You have to get health insurance from your employer if you work for more than 20 hours a week. So my employer was scheduling me for 19 hours a week so that he didn't have to give me health insurance.
Right.
So I waived that right and got to work as much as I want. It's not great, but I don't think the solution is to just get rid of the requirement that he gives me health insurance. Because what ended up happening is I was a really good employee for him. I ended up working for a Hawaiian gangster who gave me health insurance. I left. So I don't think the solution here, which the Republicans
would do
in that bill,
I think, Heaton. I think your point that there can be perverse consequences to certain things is well made. I don't know if we go any further down a thing that he has not read, it would be beneficial.
I mean, that's fine. But my whole point, like the only thing I'm trying to say is that the Republican voters don't know what Republicans do.
I think you have made That is a point.
The other
that's
thing,
well
and this is a heuristic statement. I'm not arguing the veracity of how people should vote, just in terms of how they're interpreting it. The way you're looking at it is a very class-based way of looking at it, which I think a lot of the time is a very helpful way of looking at politics. I think my way of looking at politics as ideological is probably not a great way at looking at elections. Class-based is better. I don't know that that's how the Trump voters are looking at it. I think that there's more of a outsider versus institution dynamic right now than there is working class versus upper class dynamic in terms of the people that voted for Trump. I think that's more of what they're going through is there are these institutions, Hollywood, academia, Washington, they're not working for us. We want to flush them out. I think that's going less than there are billionaires and there's us, the working class.
Even if that's true, Donald Trump, I just saw him starring in Home Alone 2. So, like,
you just saw it? It came out forever ago.
The idea that he's not Hollywood and he is not the insider with these people that everyone hates, it's absurd. It's absurd.
He has always had a weird connection to the working class. That goes beyond politics. That goes back to the Home Alone era.
I just think it speaks to how good he is.
He has always been the rich guy that the poor person identifies with,
which is bizarre. And that's all I'm saying. Is just like I think it's a really, really good con job to make him seem like someone who's an outsider in elite circles. It's absurd. It's absurd. He's always been.
He is an aspirational figure to people.
Right.
He's like, if I had money, that's how I'd do it. Just foreign model after foreign model, just knocking them up and then round of golf.
I think
and then
that's
plate everything in gold.
Oh hell yeah!
Gold bathtub, gold toilet.
Just looking at my swinging pendulous balls plowing through another foreign model in the reflection of my gold-plated toaster.
But like he is a reflection of what a lot of blue-collar people think a billionaire looks like, which is much more relatable than a person in a Patagonia jumper who's going to Davos. That is much more distant to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Because he was in Home Alone too.
People that are pretending to be middle class, that are just in like a quarter zip, that are like I'm just like you. Where Trump's like, I'm very rich, very, very rich. I love money. Oh, give me money right now. I'll eat it. And they're like, that's what I would do if I were rich. I would just say I like to eat money.
I think there's something to that.
We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor is Will Saddleberg. On PX3 this week, we have a big thing on Justin Trudeau, Andrew Heaton's old friend.
I hope you're nice to him. He's a great guy. And I was friends with his dad, too. He was an excellent prime minister.
Evan Scrimshaw is on the show, breaking down, for anybody who only cares about Canada when they're either playing us in hockey or changing world leaders, gives you the whole breakdown of what happened with Trudeau. We also have a little bit more on Facebook and their moderation decision with me and Tom Merritt. And then on Friday, we have the great Jeff Maurer talking about the future schisms of the Democratic Party and the various lanes that people seem to be coming into, as well as Kirk Beto from National Journal, whom I asked this question. What if Trump's 47th administration, compared to his 45th, is competent in the same way that his campaign was competent, in a way that it was not before? Do we need to open ourselves up to that possibility? That is Friday on PX3. Jen, what do you got on the dish?
Trying to remember. So on the public feed, we just put out our episode about the end of the 118th Congress, which was nutty. I read the continuing resolution that became law. I also read the one that didn't become law, so I get to tell you kind of what got destroyed by Elon. I have 2 provisions in there that made me think this is why Elon got rid of him, so I go into details about that, like how his hissy fit was self-serving. There's also some gossip in there. I read the Gates ethics report.
Oh.
Woo! It was a good one. But there were also a few more ethics reports, so I read those as well. So yeah, I just kind of had fun with that one. And then on the Patreon feed, we're getting close to the end of the interviews that I did at the 2 conventions. So we've done all of the Republicans. We're getting to the end of the Democrats, and it's fascinating the responses to the Democrats ones. With the hindsight of the election, people are having emotions about those interviews. So those are pretty good. And then I do have one thing to announce for Congressional Dish. We made one change already, which is that if you support Congressional Dish on Patreon, you no longer have to listen to my pitch for funding. We are now taking that out. So please support my show.
There we go.
Yeah.
Mainline the dish even faster. Heaton, what up with the ORF?
So when I was in Edinburgh this summer, a city that I'm very familiar with, I stumbled onto a group called the Library of Mistakes. And I went, how do I not know about this thing? So I called them up and went, what is the Library of Mistakes? And they went, well, we're a library of financial failure. And I went, fucking yeah. Can I talk to your librarian? And they went, we don't have a librarian. We have a keeper of the Library of Mistakes. His name is
better.
Russell Napier. If you'd like, you can meet the keeper. So it was a really good chat. I went in there not knowing what the economics of the guy was. I'm still not entirely sure what the economics was, but I think that's good because it didn't turn into any kind of boilerplate. It wasn't reconfirming my priors or fighting or anything like that. It was just an informative discussion with somebody that has a very different outlook and a hell of a lot more knowledge than me about what tends to happen in financial failure, and also some really ominous things that he said at the end that disturbed me and worried me a little bit about the future.
All right. Well, go ahead and check that out. Until then, for Andrew Heaton and Jen Briney, I'm Justin Robert Young, reminding you, dear listener and viewer, that we're not wrong.
Justin is.
Damn it.